Sergeant Arcularius. The next period of instruction will be on the M9 service pistol. Now, why do I have another pistol up here? Well, this is mainly an excerpt of a class that has already been prepared for mobilizing guard and reservists. Anybody here ever seen the M11 pistol? That would be the pistol on the right. And does anybody here know who may or may not carry that pistol? CID. Some NP battalions. It's for most soldiers, you will rarely encounter that pistol. It's made by SIG Arms. Really nice piece of equipment. The difference between the two, the M9 service pistol costs somewhere in the neighborhood of $289 a copy. When the copy comes, it comes with a cleaning kit, 2 magazines, and a holster. A SIG 228, or M11 as the military has given it its designator, is about a $600 pistol. Basically, the difference in accuracy is moot. All right, go ahead, click, drive on. Sergeant Anderson already covered safety. Now, let me throw a caveat to you. What is the most dangerous weapon we have in the United States Army Reserve, or in the Army, or in the military? A pistol. I'm going to explain to you why. In 2007, between 2007 and 2008, there were 92 confirmed deaths in training. All right? There were 92 soldiers, sailors, airmen, or Marine killed in training. Did you know that? 46 of those instances involved a pistol and those individuals being shot with a pistol. Did you know that? Why would I say this is the most dangerous weapon we have? Because of those 92 deaths in training, only one of them was run over by a tank. Now, why would you think it would be such a dangerous piece of equipment? People are not trained. Soldiers are not trained with the piece of equipment. You remember that first safety rule? Always assume and handle the weapon as if it were loaded. Watch this. When I pick up a rifle and I point that rifle, I have a rifle of X length. Usually, the an M16A2 has a 20-inch barrel. Would you agree? Now, the receiver extends past the length of that barrel, significantly raising that length to about 26 to 28 inches. Now you add the buttstock to it, that gun is about 31.5 inches long. Would you agree? With the M9 service pistol, it is roughly 8 inches long. It's real easy to do this. It's real easy to point it in the wrong direction. If I'm pointing the pistol down range and I go to say, what have I just done? I just flagged or pointed that pistol at somebody else. So, when we're on the pistol range, we're going to put our thinking caps on and we're going to be very aware of where that pistol is pointed. If you need to talk to somebody, you need to raise an issue or do something other than point that gun down range and be firing it, you are going to keep the gun pointed down range and raise your hand. That is, unless you are in the integrated act of firing. Does that make sense? You have to raise a safety concern to somebody. You will keep the pistol pointed down range, raise your hand, and yell, cease fire. Does that make sense to you? Personally, I am not scared to be on any other range other than a pistol range with soldiers. Because a lot of times we get other things in our mind and we don't think about that little tiny barrel. All right? So when you are on the line, your cell phones will be turned off. I do not want anybody being distracted by the ring of a cell phone. All right? If I hear a cell phone while you are on the line, I will personally ask you to go talk to Major Bayer, and he will handle the issue accordingly. Mainly because I want you focused on what you are doing. Good to go? It's not a threat, it's a promise. If I come off a bit abrasive in that fact, it's because I am abrasive in that fact. I have seen people shot, and it sucks. All right? So we're going to ensure that we assume and handle that weapon as if it was loaded. We are never going to point a weapon at anything we do not intend to shoot, fire on, or destroy. I like the word kill because it makes it more personal. Okay? I do. We're going to keep our fingers straight and off the trigger until we intend to fire that weapon system, or we intend to put bodily harm onto our little E-type silhouette. Kill. All right. We're also going to wear hearing protection and appropriate safety equipment. Like Sergeant Anderson said, we need to have some hearing protection. I would strongly advise you to be wearing some sort of eye protection. Why? More so with a pistol. The breech area of that pistol can have some residual stuff come out of that breech. Unburnt powder. How many of you ever fired a pistol before? Okay. When you go to clean that pistol, have you noticed that there's like little gold-colored specks of something there? Do you know what that is? That is actually unburnt powder. And that unburnt powder, not all of the powder inside of a pistol cartridge will always burn. All right? And it gets all inside the pistol and sometimes on the outside. So, and small pieces of brass casing get in and around that area of the breech of the pistol. So it's not a bad idea to have some eye protection over your face to ensure that that doesn't migrate to your eyes. I like to be sure your target what lies beyond as my last safety rule, because in most cases, am I going to fire that weapon at a target that has somebody behind it? No. It really comes true in a combat situation. If I'm going to shoot a bad guy and I got a group of soldiers behind him, would I necessarily engage him with live fire of my weapon system? I would be assured of that target and what lied beyond it, and I may gain ground on that bad guy to be able to shoot him from another perspective. Would that make sense? All right, so the safety rules have pretty much been ingrained, have they not? Let's just be extra careful when we start playing with M9s. Click, please. All right, when we clear this pistol, what's the first thing we need to do when we're clearing or when we come into possession of any weapon system? Ensure the weapon is pointed in a safe direction. I don't care what weapon system you have, whether it's a 1.9 or 8 howitzer, whether it's a self-propelled rocket-assisted rocket, or if it's a daggone pistol. We want to ensure that the thing is at least pointed in a safe direction, and then we're going to go along our safety procedures in clearing it. Let's go ahead and place the decocking safety lever or attempt to put the weapon on safe. Would that make sense? All right. The next thing we're going to do is, as this slide says, point it in a safe direction. But we're going to do that first. Why? I don't want to leave here with any more holes in my body than I started with. Would it make sense? Next thing we're going to do is we're going to depress the magazine release. Does everybody know where that's located? We'll talk about that. We have a slide. We're going to depress the magazine release, and we're going to drop that magazine. Now, for this purposes, if I tell you to clear the weapon system and you drop it on the ground, let it go. Let it go. We'll have time to pick that thing up later, all right? If you're not able to retain it and you say, oops, just don't bend down, let it go. All right? We're going to remove that source of ammunition, and we're going to pull the slide to the rear. How many lefties do I have? Should be about 17%, right? Or excuse me, 7%. I'm sorry. If you have problems with it, see me when we're on the range. Most right-handed shooters will pull the slide to the rear and use their thumb to engage the slide lock. You will push upward on the slide lock, ease the slide slightly forward, and that will hold the slide to the rear. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to inspect the chamber to make sure it's empty. Once you have locked the slide to the rear, you're going to come to this position. My elbows are into my side, and I have the pistol pointed safely downrange. Does that make sense? You are going to look down inside the magazine. Got it? Then you're going to tilt it slightly forward and look in the chamber of the pistol. Got it? You're going to look away. You are going to do it again. You're going to look down inside the magazine well, and then you're going to tilt it slightly forward and look in the chamber. You're going to check it twice. Do you know why I asked you to check it twice? Because we measure twice and we cut once, right? So when we go to clear that weapon, when the slide is locked to the rear, you'll bring the pistol down into here in what we're going to call our low work zone. Check the magazine well, make sure there's nothing in there. Check the chamber, look away, check the magazine well, check the chamber, click. And then what we're going to do is we're going to engage the slide stop, allowing the slide to go forward. We will take the weapon off of safe, dry fire it one time, and place it on safe. Got it? We've cleared the weapon system. Let's real quick cover some characteristics of the gun. Click. All right. What do you see? What problem do you see with this picture right now? The weapon is on fire. It's on kill. It's ready to go, right? This is my safety sergeant. Yeah, whatever. Remember when I was talking about the magazine release? Do we know where that is located? All right. This piece of equipment can be utilized ambidextrously. We can move this for a right-handed or a left-handed shooter. The magazine release is located here. All you have to do is press it inward, and it should allow the magazine to freely drop from the gun. Our decocking safety lever is that little funny thing, that little funny looking lever there, and if you notice just below it, there is a red dot. That should be your first clue, or if I was a shooter, my first indicator, that gun is not on safe. Would you agree? All right. Go ahead and click through that. All right. The M9 components, basically, when you take this gun apart, you have a few pieces. You have the receiver and or frame. Depends on what you want to call it. Some manufacturers call it a frame. Some manufacturers call it a receiver. No big deal. You have a slide and a barrel assembly. You have a magazine, a recoil spring guide. This is the guide, quite obviously, and this is your spring. And you have your barrel. At no time do you need to take it apart any farther than that. Good to go? Click. All right. Briefly, understand that the selector lever, or the safety selector lever, is ambidextrous. It's on both sides. Okay? How many here has not played with an M9 pistol? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, about a handful, maybe 2 handfuls. Okay, a cargo pocket load. Well, let's look at the trigger. Would you agree that trigger is shaped somewhat different than your rifle? This trigger is more of a pendulum style trigger, and we will go into that when we start talking about the trigger control and how we utilize that with this pistol. The disassembly lever, which is located at number 6, and there's a disassembly button located at number 16. In order to take this gun apart, you need to depress the disassembly button, take the disassembly lever and rotate it down into the 6 o'clock position, and the slide will come right off evenly. We will talk about this when it comes to cleaning weapons. Good to go? Click. All right. Notice my decocking safety lever in the top left portion of my slide. Notice that portion of the decocking safety lever is pointed in the downward position. Is it on fire or safe? Notice on the top right, we are on fire, are we not? Notice on my lower left portion of my slide, I have a little pin or a little block that raises up. Does everybody understand how that works? When you rotate your decocking safety lever, You have a firing pin inside the gun, and then you have a secondary, basically, firing pin. When you rotate that lever, what happens is that secondary firing pin does this. All right? When the gun is on safe, that secondary firing pin is basically like this. So if the hammer was to fall, the firing pin cannot go forward to discharge a cartridge. Does that make sense? When you put it on fire, it aligns those two pins up. When you pull the trigger, it will allow the hammer to push forward on both of those pins, discharging a cartridge. Does that make sense? Then you have something called a firing pin block. When you pull the trigger, and you'll notice if you get a chance to pull the trigger or dry fire the gun, this little block keeps raising up as you pull the trigger. Okay? There are some parts inside the gun that allow that block to be pushed up out of the way to allow free movement of the firing pin itself. So it's almost like a redundant safety system. The slide, as you were, the safety lever rotates down and out of the way, and the firing pin block blocks the movement of the firing pin. You cannot drop this gun and expect it to discharge if the gun is off safe or if it is on safe. Does that make sense? Why was that placed onto this gun? Little history lesson. Because of the Navy. The Navy has a history going back to 1913 with the Model 10 M&P service pistol, that if they had a couple of instances where when they dropped the pistol on the decks of boats, the gun would discharge. So as a safety precaution, all pistols up to that, after that point, were required something to block the firing pin from going forward if they were to drop it on the steel deck of a ship. Cool? All right. Click. Let's talk about how to load it. Sergeant Anderson talked about some condition codes. Green, amber, red, and black. I have a pistol. It is on safe. The slide is forward on an empty chamber. What condition is that? How do I take that pistol from green to amber? Click. I'm going to take a filled magazine, guide, slide, listen for the audible click, and ensure that it is correctly seated. I'm going to guide the magazine into the magazine well, slide it all the way up, and then listen for an audible click, ensuring that that magazine is seated. Good to go? We are in what condition? We are in amber. Now, in order to get this thing in red position, what am I going to do? I'm going to reach up and I'm going to grab the grasping grooves. Those little serrations in the slide, just forward of the safety lever. You know what I'm talking about? Those are technically called grasping grooves. I'm going to take the pistol, slightly turn it inboard towards my position. If I'm left-handed, slightly turn it inboard towards my position. I'm going to grab with my booger picker and my thumb the grasping grooves. I'm going to pull the slide all the way to the rear and let it go. I say again, I'm going to pull it all the way to the rear and I will let it go. Do I ride it forward? Why? Jam. You could wind up with a jam or some peanut butter on toast. Basically, if you guide it forward, the gun or the ammunition may not have enough force to fully seat into the chamber. Make sense? So I'm going to grab that grasping groove, I'm going to pull it all the way to the rear and let it go. Slingshot it. Just as you would with an M16. Pull the charging handle all the way to the rear and let it go. Make sense? All right, we are in what condition? Point. In order to go to black, what am I going to do? I'm going to take my non-dominant hand. All right, let's talk about dominant and non-dominant hand, or master and or non-master hand. What do you think would be my master hand? My master hand is the hand that is going to be utilized to pull the trigger, or the one that has the trigger finger attached to it. Make sense? My non-dominant hand would be the support hand, the other hand that I'm going to use. I'm going to take my support hand and disengage the selector lever. Why would I do that? Maybe we'll talk about that in a minute. Maybe we'll talk about that in a minute. But I'm going to go ahead and maneuver that selector lever to the semi position, and I am in the black condition. Would you agree? Now, how do I go back to green from that? Step one, what is it? Place the weapon on safe, right? What's the next thing I'm going to do? I'm going to drop the magazine. Outstanding. See, I'm getting a little more class participation. I've just dropped the magazine. What's the next thing I'm going to do? I'm going to go ahead and pull the slide all the way to the rear, and I'm going to lock it to the rear. Right? What's the next thing I'm going to do? I'm going to look inside the magazine well in the chamber and ensure that it is clear. How many times am I going to do that? Now, what am I going to do? I'm going to release the slide. Remember that one? Then what am I going to do? I'm going to rotate the selector lever from safe to semi, and I'm going to move the trigger rearward. Doing what? Dry firing one shot. Please, dear God, make sure you checked it twice, because if I hear a shot fire while we are supposed to be clearing our guns, it probably will make me a bit nervous, right? It probably will make your buddy a bit nervous, all right? The pucker factor is going to go up. After I have dry fired that shot, what am I going to do? I'm going to put the weapon back on safe and stand by for further instruction. Good to go? Any questions, comments, or observations? And I have a stoppage in one of the 8 cycles of operation. What am I going to do? I am going to apply immediate action. What is immediate action? Correct. It is an unhesitated response to get the weapon back into action without determining the cause. That's a textbook definition. Probably didn't really want to hear that, did you? That is a textbook definition. So what do I do to do that with an M9 service pistol? I am going to apply tap, click. I'm going to slap the bottom of the magazine, ensure that it is fully seated into the magazine well. I will say this as a caveat. 99.9% of the time, when you have a stoppage with an M9 service pistol, it's because you did not load the pistol correctly. And most of the time is the fact you didn't seat the magazine correctly. And when you loaded it, the round stripping lug that is located, it's one of the parts of the gun, the round stripping lug of the slide did not pick up the first round. Which means if you reach out and you pull the trigger and you hear click, you need to seat the magazine. Tap. What's the next action? It's up there for you. Rack. Grab the grasping grooves. Pull the slide all the way to the rear and let it go. That's rack. What's the next step? Bang! That was a little loud, right? Got your attention. You're going to sight in and attempt to fire. Squeeze the trigger. I like to say sight in and attempt to fire, okay? Because I would rather you not squeeze the trigger or think about squeezing the trigger inadvertently unless the gun was at least pointed at your target. Because, as Sergeant Anderson already covered, this is a non-alibi match. Any round that doesn't meet the target would be considered a miss. Okay? Next. If immediate action does not work, what are we going to do? We are going to go into a process of remedial action. It's a continued effort to get the weapon back into action. Checking out, making sure, or trying to find out what caused the malfunction and get it back up and running. All right, let's make it real simple. If tap, rack, bang does not work for you, you need to unload the weapon, reload the weapon, and drive on. Does that make sense? That's about as simple as it can be said. Unload the weapon. We know how to go from black to green, right? Reload the weapon. That means go back from green back to black, right? and drive on with firing the weapon system. Click. Now let's talk about pistol marksmanship. Click. Wow. We got a couple elements of pistol marksmanship up there. We have grip, aiming, breath control, trigger squeeze, target engagement, and positions. It's a whole lot of stuff to remember, isn't it? That's a whole lot. Let me break it down like this. We have 4 fundamentals of marksmanship when it comes to shooting a rifle. Would you agree? I would also submit to you that you have 4 fundamentals of marksmanship when it comes to shooting a pistol. Would you agree or disagree? Now, how we utilize those 4 fundamental marksmanship, or those 4 fundamentals of marksmanship, depends on what weapon system I have in my hand. Would you agree? Mm-hmm. Slightly. Now, depending on what weapon system I have in my hand, tells me what I need to be doing, and I'm going to call that a discipline. All right? Now, rifle marksmanship requires a slight different discipline than pistol marksmanship does. Why would you agree and or disagree with that statement? You have a smaller sight radius. That's one. Fewer points of contact. What does that mean? Your hands are holding the weapon. See, with a rifle, I have a couple of more points of contact. I have the firing hand, I have the non-firing hand, I have the shoulder, and I have the face. I have at least 4 points of contact. Now, if I'm in the low prone, I have a 5th point of contact because I can place the magazine on the ground. Would you agree? Right? I have 5 points of contact, possibly with a rifle. How many points of contact do I have with a pistol? 2. Milo and Otis right here. Right there. I got 2 hands. In the sport that I compete in, I have 1. All right? In my sport that I currently compete in is national match bullseye pistol. We shoot this pistol at 50 and 25 yards. And we utilize 1 point of contact. And we stand about like that. All right? With this pistol, we're going to allow you to have 2 points of contact. We're going to let you shoot it with 2 hands. Good to go? So let's talk about the first element, grip. Grip is the most important thing you must understand about a pistol. The reason why it is the most important thing you have to understand about the pistol is that, very simply, the grip controls the trigger. If your grip is poop, your trigger is poop. All right? Say again? You would have a handful of caca. Okay? Grip is the most important thing. You have to remember that you have to get correct with a pistol. How many of you have ever fired a pistol and after your first shot you had to remove the gun around in your grip? Fire the gun and remove the gun around in your grip. How many of us have done that? My Lord, it happens to me. And I shoot pistol probably a lot more. I fire a lot more pistol bullets downrange than all of you combined in a year. Or maybe in 10. All right? Every now and then when you shoot a shot, boom, you got like, man, it moved. Do you know why it moved? Because you didn't do something right. It's real simple. You didn't do something right. All right, so let's talk about how to do it right. I'm not real big into talking about how not to do something wrong. Let's talk about how to do it right. First thing we need to do is we need to look at the back strap of that pistol. That little portion of the back part of that pistol grip that comes up in a slight arc. You know what I'm talking about. We need to have it high and firm in our hand, in the webbing of our hand. Kind of like this picture. Notice you can barely see the back strap of this pistol because it's, as we would say, it's buried all up in there. Would you agree? By doing that, what that did is that got the center line of the bore. Remember that thing that Sergeant Anderson was talking about with the rifle? Well, I would submit to you that a pistol has a center line of the bore. Does that make sense? All right. One of the reasons he's got it, quote unquote, buried all up in there is because he gets that hand high and it brings the center line of the bore closer to the hand. We'll talk about why that's important here in a second. So we've got the pistol placed in our hand nice and tight, and then we need to grasp it with our other fingers. Would you agree? All right. Notice what direction the thumb is pointed. Would you agree it is reasonably pointed downrange? Or at least along the axis or down the axis of the slide. Would you agree? Yes. See, that's what I'm talking about. Positive response. The next thing we need to look at is, let's look at his fingers. Now, how many of us have ever heard of the term white knuckling? Okay? Oh, he's white knuckling this thing like it owes him money. He's all up in there. What does that tell you? If I was in law enforcement, I would call that a clue, but I am not, technically. Okay? So what would that tell me? He's gripping it. And he's gripping it tight. All right? I like to say when you shoot combat style, you are gripping that pistol like somebody's got the end of the gun and they're trying to rip it out of your hand. Would that make sense to you? All right, now what I want everybody to do is I wanted you to take your brain fart back up. I want you to take your master hand, usually the one you write with. I want you to put it up just like I did right here. I want you to take your three fingers, Scout's rule or whatever it is, just like I got right here with my support hand. I want you to place those three fingers into your hand, and what we're going to do is we're going to do some pretending. All right? What I want you to do is I want you to grasp those three fingers and leave your trigger finger out of the equation, all right? It's just hanging out there in the breeze. We'll get to that thing in a minute, all right? What I want you to do is I want you to grab those three fingers as tight as you can possibly, squeeze it as tight as you can, almost to the threshold of pain with those three fingers. Got it? Now, after you have done that, I want you to start slowly and smoothly moving that trigger finger fore and aft. What do you notice about that grip? Do you notice that the bones in your hand in here are moving? Do you notice that? Do you notice that when I grip it that tight, my fingers here are not moving as much? Do you notice that? All right, now what I want you to do is put the Fifi grip on it. What the Major was talking about earlier. Put the relaxed grip onto that and go ahead and move that trigger finger fore and aft. Real relaxed. What you'll notice is those fingers start to move the looser you grab the gun. Would you agree? If I am holding this pistol loosely and I'm moving that trigger and those fingers are doing this, what do you think I am displaying to the gun? Movement. This guy back here is going, nee, 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 nee. That's why when some of us shoot a pistol, our groups look like rat crap in a dresser drawer. Would you agree? Because we are putting movement onto the pistol that does not need to be there. All right? So, which condition, loose or tight, displayed less movement to the pistol within your grip? Now, do I have you convinced you probably need to grab that thing like it owes you money? All right. We're at that point of the firing hand. Let's talk about the non-dominant hand. Ha-ha! Check out that slide. Notice with his support hand, which direction the support thumb is pointed. It's pointed downrange. Now, there are a lot of self-professed experts, and I happen to be one of them, and if you've never heard any of this, it might be because I'm making it up. Maybe not. What would you call, technically, what you see on the slide? What is that referred to? In the shooting world, that is referred to as the isosceles grip. Isosceles is not a position. It is grip. All right? What does that mean, isosceles grip and or position? Do you understand what I'm getting at? All right. What I want to do with this, I'll get to that in a second. What I want to do with my support hand is I want to take that support hand and I want to point the thumb downrange. Everybody do that. Go ahead, let's do it. I've got my master hand and I got my support hand, and I'm going to point the thumb downrange. What that's doing is that's torquing that wrist. Okay? And when I bring that support hand to that master hand, all I'm doing is I'm laying that support thumb, or the meat of that thumb, underneath the master hand thumb. Does that make sense? And then I'm gripping it quite firmly. I'm gripping it like it owes me money. Okay? And like somebody wants to take the pistol away from me. Does that make sense? When your thumbs are aligned like this, down the axis of the bore, that is referred to as the isosceles grip. If I went to a Weaver grip, what that would require me to do is, if you can see, everybody can see my thumbs, I will put my thumbs in the form of the letter T. All I'm going to do is put my thumb on top, just like this, and look what it causes me to do. What is this arm doing that it wasn't doing before? Yeah, I look like Dirty Harry or some daggone Hollywood movie, right? Do we understand why the Weaver grip was developed and why or when we would utilize it? When you what? When you don't have body armor? Nope. For longer range? Nope. Nope. For shooting behind cover. Watch. Okay? It is for shooting behind covers or when utilizing a barricaded position. It is not for you to be standing out there in the open wind like this. Now, if you shoot better and you perceive that you shoot better for these purposes, hey, please go ahead and do it. I submit to you, if you start utilizing a correct isosceles grip, you will have more behind the gun. Now, let's talk about getting something behind the gun. When we grip this pistol like this, it causes the pistol to be straight out in front of us. Why would that be advantageous for us as soldiers? What would you say earlier? Body armor. My sternum plate, my body armor is right here. Why wouldn't I want to point that towards my enemy? If I'm standing like this, I could quite possibly take a hit in an area that is not armored. Would you agree? Just saying. The other reason why we want to go with isosceles is it allows both arms to be locked out. All right? All right, everybody go like this. I don't know. Okay. And when I say go, I don't know, not drop the shoulders, lift the shoulders. I don't know. Now, understand, when I told you to lift your shoulders, that brought, what are those, trapezius? The trapezius muscles? That brought the shoulders and trapped the trapezius muscles up here. Okay? This is the first step to getting into position with a pistol. Click. Go back. I raised my shoulders. I got my grip. Notice I kept that position. Notice I'm keeping that position. I get my grip and I punch the pistol straight out. What am I doing with the gun if I'm doing this? Say it again. Say it louder.
Bringing the weapon up to the line of sight.
I'm bringing the weapon up to my line of sight. Remember when Sergeant Anderson was talking about bringing the weapon up to your eye? Very often with a lot of soldiers, I see soldiers doing this. Bringing their head down to look through the gun or look through the sights. Make sense? Well, no, it doesn't make sense. Let's bring the gun up to us. So when we grab the pistol, we're going to grab the pistol with our master hand like it owes us money, right? We're going to take our support grip. We're going to run that thumb down along underneath that thumb, that opposing thumb, and we're going to grip it like it owes us money, correct? We're going to slightly turn those elbows slightly outboard, locking those arms out, and lift those shoulders. And we're going to punch the gun straight out in front of us, and we're going to bring the gun to us. Does that make sense? So now we have a correct grip we can then worry about aligning some sights with. Click. How many of y'all ever noticed that when you shot an M9 service pistol, it may or may not have been shooting low? You ever notice it kind of shoots low? How many of you guys that ever shot low were probably taking those little white dots? See the little white dot on the front sight post and see the little white half moon on the back, the portion of the back sight? How many of you ever took that little white dot and set it on top of that little half moon? Well, if I was to do that, where do you think those sights would be pointed? If I was to take this and set it down on top of that dot, right, that half dot right there, it would probably dip the front sight post somewhere about here and therefore cause you to shoot low. Would that make sense? So then why would you utilize the dots? Now some of you may ask why they're there. Well, because this pistol was originally designed to shoot 115 grain ball ammunition, and ammunition that is slightly different what we're using now. And if you actually align those dots with 115 grain ammunition, it'll actually work. But with the ammunition that we utilize now in the United States Army, it will not work. Good to go? Said that real fast, right? So when we talk about sight alignment and we talk about aiming this pistol, I need the clear tip of the front sight post. Notice I said clear tip. What does that tell you? It's in focus. And if that clear tip is in focus, that means that my visual acuity is focused on that. And if my visual acuity is focusing on that, what else is in focus? Nothing. Because in this picture, if you notice, the back sight is it blurred or fuzzy? Yeah, if the clear tip of the front sight post is in my visual acuity and it is clear, everything else around it and past it is askew. Now notice where it says even gaps. What we want to ensure of is when the clear tip of that front sight post, ensuring that it is right along and even with the top edge of that rear sight, and we also want to ensure that there's an even amount of light on both sides of that weapon system. That is what correct sight alignment looks like. What is the difference between sight alignment and sight picture? It disheartens me to hear soldiers speak so much about sight picture when they don't truly understand the weight of their words. What is more important, sight alignment or sight picture? Why? That's your starting part. Sergeant Anderson said that I got to know that I'm pointing this thing correctly. Would you agree? Now, once I have gained sight alignment, I then may want to superimpose it over a given aiming area. Would you agree? Go ahead and click. That is a correct picture of sight picture. When you have correct sight alignment placed in the center mass of a target, you then have sight picture. Does that make sense? Sight picture is when sight alignment is correctly placed in an aiming area. Now, your aiming area may be this big, it may be this big, or it may be that big. All it means is sight alignment is center of your aiming area. Now, our aiming area is where? Center of what? Mass, right? Everybody point to center mass on your body. Go ahead and point at center mass. And go ahead, with your booger picker right here, point at center mass. Because I'm going to wait for some of you to go ahead and make the decision of where that is. And then I'm going to show you where it is. Notice where I put my finger is different than where a lot of folks put their finger. Center mass is an area located between the navel and the xiphoid process. Well, Sergeant, that's a bit low from what I've been trained in the past. Why? Why is there a head on that target? Really good to read the SLA Marshall report. There's a head on that target to confuse you and to freaking mentally get you in the whole idea that shooting at humanoid targets is an acceptable thing to do. Why? Because Mom and Grandma and Apple Pie says we don't kill people. But we're in an organization where our primary mission is to kill people and break things. Would you agree? And daggone it, we do a pretty good job. Would you agree? I mean, heck, we got the best door kickers in the world, and the rest of the world are looking at us like, oh, God, don't make them mad now, because they now have a trained, standing army. Would you agree? Center mass is an area located between the belly button or the navel and the xiphoid process. That's about right there. All right? Anybody ever smelled a gut shot deer? That's what a gut shot person smells like. That's basically what you're doing, is you're gut shooting them. Why are you not center heart punching them? Because the reason they are not worrying about you placing an incapacitation shot in the face or in the brain bucket or in the heart is our job is to do what? Put precision fire on key select targets. Our job is to hit that thing. We have a greater probability of hit if we aim at that thing's center mass. That's right about there. Would you agree? How many football players do I got in the crowd? What did they always say when you're getting ready to tackle a guy? Do you look at his head? You look at what his head is doing? If you're going to tackle the guy and you're looking at his head, guess what? He's going to be going boogity, 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 boogity down the field, and you're going to be laying there going, how'd I miss? Well, I would assume the same thing. In a qualification course, if you're sitting there looking at his head and the target faces away, well, how did I miss? It's easier to pick up center mass. Does that make sense? All right, driving on. Let's talk about breath control. Remember what Sergeant Anderson said about breath control? I would submit to you that when you go to place a shot downrange, whether it be a rifle or a pistol, you probably want to stop breathing. Now, at your natural respiratory pause is probably the best place for you to deliver that shot when you breathe in, breathe out, and you have that pause within your respiratory cycle. That's probably where in your breathing cycle you want to deliver the shot, but simple fact of the matter is, before you go to deliver the shot, you probably want to stop breathing. Why? It steadies the lay of the gun. It probably steadies the lay of the gun. Would you agree? All right, now, we've talked about grip. We're going to grip that thing like it owes us money, right? We have spoken about a position, roughly. Have we not? We've talked about breathing, and I skated over breathing real easy. Haven't I? Because I don't technically believe that it is truly a fundamental of marksmanship. It's a fundamental of life. Click. Now let's talk about the most important fundamental that you have outside of grip with a pistol. And you have disturbed everything that you have started with. Would you agree? All right. Now let's talk about, when we talk about a pistol, trigger control is 1,000 times more critical times infinity. Why? Why would you agree or why would you disagree that trigger control is more important with a pistol than it is with a rifle? You have a shorter barrel. What does that equate to? Say again.
more deflection for a smaller movement?
You may have more deflection of the cartridge or the projectile with lesser movement. Would you agree or disagree? I think I'd agree. What's the other reason why trigger control is more important? Say again? Points of contact, absolutely. Trigger control is more important because I only have how many points of contact? Milo and Otis, right? All I've got are these 2 points of contact, and if I then jerk the trigger, what can I do? I can display more movement to the gun. Would you agree? Causing deflection on our projectile. Would you agree? Anybody disagree? All right, I will submit to you this. The more pistol you shoot, and the more you learn trigger control through a pistol, the better rifle shooter you will become. Would you agree, Sergeant Anderson? Here. Wish I'd have learned it a whole long time ago. So, how do we do this with a pistol? First of all, the trigger finger should not contact the pistol. It should be slightly off the grip of the pistol. I've been doing a lot of reading leading up to this course to kind of get my brain and my brain power into doing this, because it's been about a year since I've taught a class like this, and specifically a little longer have I taught a class in this style of environment. Okay, usually it's knuckle draggers that I'm teaching, you know. Would you put the tip of your finger on the trigger? Why not? Say again? One hypothesis is accidental discharge. Would you agree or disagree? I will neither agree nor will I disagree. It's not the answer I was looking for. Would I put the tip of my finger on a trigger? Maybe. All right. How many of y'all got kids? I got 2. I got 2 little baby girls, and guess what my baby girls love to drink? Milk. That'll do, donkey. That'll do. How many of y'all remember Sergeant Anderson said that that rifle weighs somewhere in and around 8 pounds? Somewhere around 8 pounds? How many of y'all know how much a jug of milk weighs? About 8 pounds. You know why I'm saying about 8 pounds? Because a gallon of water weighs 8 pounds. Can I borrow your piece of equipment right here? All right, TD. How many of y'all would go to the store and carry a jug of milk on the tip of your finger? How many of you would go grab a jug of milk and carry it by the tip of your finger? You know, I'm not the brightest bulb on the Christmas tree, but that don't sound real smart, does it? I mean, you know, they don't put screen doors on submarines, do they? Your drill sergeant told you to put the tip of your finger on an 8-pound jug of daggone water and or milk. Does that sound right? Forgive them, for they know not what they do. Think about what I said. Are you going to carry a jug of milk with the tip of your finger? If you wouldn't do it with a jug of milk, why would you do it with a trigger? Why would you do it with a trigger? It makes no sense, does it? Placed into that context, it makes no sense, does it? Well, now some of you are sitting there going, daggone, Sergeant Arcularius, would you please make sense of it then? Drive on, brother. Well, what we're going to do is we're going to talk about where to place it. Remember when Sergeant Anderson was talking about some folks want to use their ring finger up and around the groove of that rifle to bring their grip higher so they can get more that trigger, more finger in there. Well, I'll submit to you that could be a detriment as well with a pistol, though. So here's the answer. Everybody grab the tip of your finger and kind of just squeeze it like you're squeezing the Charmin, all right? Notice that the tip of your finger, depending on your level of physical fitness and who your parents were, because we can't control who that is, but how your body's designed, the pad of your finger is kind of mushy. Would you agree? Now go back to the next joint. When you go into that joint, it's harder. Would you agree? And then you go into the center portion, and it's mushy again. How many of you ever stuck the tip of your finger on a trigger and started moving it smoothly rearward, and it seemed like it was moving, but the gun didn't fire yet? What I will say to you is, you probably had a condition where you're actually taking up the slack in the skin of your finger. So what I would tell you to do is take and place your finger in the area of that first digit, somewhere in there where it's slightly harder, so you can have a better understanding and or feel of what that trigger is doing while you are moving it rearward. Does that make sense to you? Does it? After that, depending on, because I do have some gorilla hands. I have pretty good sized hands, right? After that, I will start moving my trigger finger in more so rather than outward. Does that make sense? So I will start with this area and move my trigger finger towards the trigger inward until I find a happy resting place. Does that make sense to you? Driving on, please. Remember when we talked about the firing positions? When you are told on the firing line to ready position, this is what it will look like. Notice, he has already established his grip. Agreed? His pistol is reasonably 45 degrees from the ground. Would you agree? I mean, we're not going to be sticklers here. His feet are slightly shoulder width apart. Now, when we talk about shoulder width apart, I'm talking instep, not outstep. Does that make sense to you? I'm going to take the instep and put them outward shoulder width apart. Does that make sense? That is the ready position. Next slide. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to talk about the standing position without support. Notice as this individual is slightly leaning forward. This happens to be Lance Espinosa, if you know who he is. Notice something about his feet. Is he pigeon-toed with his toes pointing inboard? What would that cause you to do if you're slightly leaning forward? All right, what you kind of need to pretend is that you've got a plumb bob. Everybody here know what a plumb bob is? All right. You got a plumb bob hanging from your belt. If I turn my toes inboard, that's going to make me move too far out, and the plumb bob's going to go out here. Would you agree? Would the center of gravity, or would your body's center of gravity then be over its support legs? Probably not. Agree? So what he has done, and it's tough to see in this picture, he has slightly turned his toes outboard. Okay? So when he leans forward, he has that resistance of the balls of his feet. Make sense? He has slightly bent knees. He's not locked out like we're at parade rest and like the old man's getting ready to court-martial you, all right? His knees are slightly bent. His hips are square to the target. He has slightly leaned forward with his hips. Remember when I said, I don't know? He's got the pistol pointed straight out in front of him. Would you agree? He's also got an isosceles grip. That isosceles grip therefore turns into an isosceles stance. All right? That is the standing firing position. Any questions? Click. The next thing we're going to talk about is the kneeling. All right. You have the one or the two-knee kneeling. What is the difference between this and standing? All he did was he bent at the knees. Everything up here should be the same. All he did was he took this and took the two knees and then sat back on his heels. So he trained one technique that will help him in two positions. Would you agree? Yeah. That's probably not a bad idea, is it? That consistency word. Haven't used that one yet. That consistency thing. He has a consistent position from standing to kneeling. Notice what I just did. I can transition from standing to kneeling and back at my target without having the gun come off a line of the target. Would you agree? And if you get into further competitions and stuff where you actually have to run and gun, that may actually help you in that respect. The other position that we have is the single knee kneeling. And all we're going to do is just go down onto one knee. And we're going to utilize, what grip do you think we'd utilize here now? The Weaver grip. Why? Well, remember, when I got into the Weaver grip, that caused my elbow to drop, right? I would then be able to take that elbow and stick it on the top of my knee. Would you agree? Now, a lot of that position looks about as good as a football bat. Would you agree? It doesn't look like he probably does that position very good. Technically, he does have a lot of problems with it. But when you shoot the Weaver position or the one knee position, you don't want to be out in front of you. You want to be slightly askewed and put your face on your arm. Notice what I'm saying? Does everybody see what I'm doing? I'm skewed to the target. My body here is facing the target. Make sense? I'm not doing this because then I've lost my support. I'm rotated into my position. All right? Driving on. Aha, the crouch position. Now, where does this derive from? That derives from being able to draw a pistol and go, ah. If you read some of the other tactical reports that have been done in the past, they believe, or it has been thought with folks with lesser training have the tendency to do this in combat. I would agree that that is possibly true. The crouch position to be legal, we'll talk about that in a second. All he has done is taken that standing position, widened the stance, and bent the knees. We took a standing position we already had, we widened the stance and bent the knees. Make sense? Now, to be legal, you have to be able to drop one hand and touch your knee. Make sense? I should not be hearing, well, Sarge, my knees are bent. Yeah, can you touch your knees? No, well, I got bad knees. Well, you know what? I got sympathy. It's in the dictionary between two other words. All right? The correct crouch position is a standing position. Move one of your feet out 6 more inches and bend your knee. You should be able to touch your knee. Make sense? What that position allows is, what the standing position allows and what the kneeling position, all 3 of those positions should allow you control of the gun. With the arms locked out, the gun brought to you, whether I'm doing this or I'm on my knees, when I pull the trigger, the recoil of the gun should come straight back into my arms. Why would that be important? Okay, what I'm talking about in position. The sign of a good position should give you what's called a recoil management system. All right, big phrase again. What I'm doing with my position is I am utilizing that body posture to manage the recoil of the gun. That way I can be more easily or readily applying shots downrange faster. If I have the capability of managing the recoil of the gun, I can then place rapid follow-on successive shots over and over and over with less movement of the gun off the target. Does that make sense? The reason I'm stressing these positions so much is, how many of us have a pistol in their hand every day? The one thing that we probably have over most soldiers in the Army is dexterity. Why? How many of you do a whole lot of this every day? All right? I don't, because I am a knuckle dragger, okay? Some of you may walk out of this after the first, second, or third day going, man, my hand hurts. Guess what you're doing? You know why your hand may be hurting? because you are exercising muscles and or tendons you may not have exercised enough. You should mirror or mimic these positions to allow you to have rapid follow-on successive shots to the target, because some of these iterations require rapid fire or sustained fire. More than one shot fired in a specific time limit. Good to go? Click. Let's talk about the prone position. All we did was we took the standing position and laid down with it. Well, when we laid down with it, can we lift our head high enough? What he did was he then broke at the elbows to bring the gun to him. That is this position, conventional prone. Rollover prone. What we did was we got what grip? That Weaver grip, that T grip if you want to call it. And what he did is he rolled over, bladed his body more to the target, and laid his head on his arm. I would submit to you that this is probably the easiest position to shoot prone in. Why? I'm all about doing things easy, and that's what I do. Because I got the breadbasket right here. The breadbasket of America has come down upon me, and it's the only way I can effectively shoot a pistol prone and have competent group sizes, okay? I do it because it's easy. A lot of folks may find that when you pull the trigger in the conventional prone, you may not have the grip dexterity or the strength to hold the gun tight enough to have a recoil management system. Okay? The other nice thing is, if you notice his support hand here, it's actually on the ground, isn't it? So what did he just add to his position? Another point of contact. See what I'm saying? It ain't cheating. It ain't cheating. Any questions on positions? Click. Any questions on position? Okay. The last thing I'm going to cover is function checking a pistol. Any function check of any weapon system, what does it check? Don't say function. What are you actually checking? What do you think? Operation? Anyone else? Anyone else? What are you checking? The moving parts? Anyone else? All right. What you are specifically checking is whether or not the trigger mechanism works. If I perform a function check, does that mean if I load the gun and pull the trigger, that gun's going to go bam, bang, or boom? Does that mean that gun's going to actually fire a shot? No. No, it does not mean that the gun will fire a shot. What it does check is whether the trigger mechanism works and whether the safeties of the weapon system work. Primarily the safeties. Let's cover function check. Click. All right, first thing we're going to do is we're going to insert an empty magazine into the weapon. And we are going to retract the slide and release it. Why? I want to make sure the daggone magazines lock the slide to the rear. Would that be an important thing? I want to make sure my magazines work with the gun. That's a good idea. Next thing I'm going to do is press the magazine release button and make sure that the gun actually spits the magazine out. Would that be a good idea? Mm-hmm. Yeah, might want to make sure that your magazines work with your pistol. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to ensure the decocking safety lever is in the safe position. Make sense? Why? Because I'm going to depress the slide and release it, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to ensure that when the slide went forward, the hammer stayed where? Or went where? With the safety decocking lever in the safe position, the hammer should follow the slide. The hammer should fall. Would you agree? Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to squeeze the trigger. The firing pin block. Remember that little block I spoke to you about on top of the slide just in front of the rear sight? It should raise and fall. All right, that's one of your little safeties. You want to make sure them safeties work, right? You're going to make sure that it raises and falls. Then you're going to go ahead and you're going to squeeze the trigger as you were iron plate. When you do that, the hammer should not move all the way. Go ahead and click. You're going to place the decocking lever in the fire position. You're going to pull the trigger all the way to the rear. What should happen? The hammer should fall. The hammer should come all the way to the rear, and the hammer should fall. The next thing you're going to do is you're going to squeeze the trigger and hold it to the rear. What are we checking now? Single action. We're going to pull the trigger in double action mode. We're going to wait, let the hammer fall. We're going to reach up and grab the slide and charge it. We're going to make sure that the gun cocked. We're going to ease the trigger forward. We're going to listen for an audible click. What's that audible click? Y'all know? That's the reset of the sear or the release of the disconnector. We're going to make sure that the hammer cocked and we reset the trigger. We're then going to press the trigger, and what's going to happen? The hammer should fall, right? And then the last thing we're going to do is we're going to squeeze the trigger as you were. We're going to put the weapon in safe position, squeeze the trigger, ensure it does not, the hammer makes no movement, and we're done. Click. Are there any questions? Any questions? All right, so, real quick wrap up. Are we going to move the sights on our pistol? So, if you've got a little tiny group about this big, and it's over here, what are you probably going to want to be doing with the pistol? You're going to want to aim in a slightly different spot. That's called offset aiming. Good to go? Real quick, what grip are we going to utilize primarily with our pistol? The isosceles grip. That's thumbs running along the axis of the bore, correct? How are we going to grip the pistol? Like it owes us money, right? We're going to grip it like somebody's trying to take it away from us. What are we going to do with our support hand? Or point that thumb down range, locking that wrist out, and grip it the same way like somebody owes us money. Where are we going to bring the pistol when we're aiming it? We're going to bring it to our eyes and to our face. All right? Are there any questions, comments, or observations?